Welcome back to Happiness in Progress. I'm your host, Danielle Craig. I'm an Emmy Award winner, former journalist, mom, wife, and just a person looking for more joy in the everyday. This podcast is brought to you by the Mail Tribune. The Mail Tribune has several podcasts you can check out. Just head on over to mailtribune.com. Tickets are on sale right now for the Happiness in Progress live event, and early bird pricing ends May 25th. That is less than 10 days away, so make sure to get your tickets today. And remember, there will be a dinner, a beautiful setting at Roxanne Winery in Southern Oregon. And most importantly, we're going to be digging deep on self-worth issues, perfectionism, expectations, shame, and how to get out of that. You will leave feeling empowered and rejuvenated. The website to get tickets is linked in the show notes. All right, let's get to today's guest. Dr. Rubina Tahir is a board-certified chiropractor and co-founder of the Positivity Charge. Her goal is to inspire healthy lifestyles. She does this in the office, with a podcast, Positivity Charge, and as she holds retreats and pop-up events in cities nationwide. Rubina has contributed to the Huffington Post blog and Thrive Global. She's been quoted in Reader's Digest, Cosmopolitan, Prevention Magazine, Men's Health Magazine, and many more.
It's really easy to say, how could I be feeling this way? This is awful. Life is full of ups and downs are different, emotions, and we cannot self-punish. It's very detrimental.
In this episode, we talked about so much. We talked about how Rubina got started on a quest for more positivity in her life, what she's learned on this journey. We also talk about how she's able to turn a negative day around quickly, how important it is to have face-to-face real conversations with real people, and how to celebrate the little things. I like to start by giving you the floor, giving you the opportunity to just tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a chiropractor, by day, and I guess like a positivity superhero by night. That's the way that I like to think about it. But really what I do is try to set an example. I'm myself, and I try to set a healthy example. So as a chiropractor, educating people, that's a really big passion of mine. And that came early on for me. My mom had a very early cancer diagnosis. She was really young, and she fought cancer 5 times, and she's still alive. And so for me, she's really just that superhero that I looked up to, and that led me into wanting to work in healthcare and wanting to inspire people. And I do that through a variety of ways. So whether it be in the office, at home with my family, through events, through podcasts like this one, or through articles in the media. And so that's really my true life. And it's really amazing to say that, because I think that when you are trying to figure out what you want to do, you end up in different directions. And so for me to just say that, I finally found my path or my calling has been really amazing.
Was it a hard road to get there, or was it pretty straightforward? You'd seen what your mom had been through and you wanted to make that difference. You knew right away.
I knew right away, but, ideas are one thing, and navigating them and putting, manifesting your actions or your vibes is another thing. And so I knew what I wanted to do, and I didn't know how to do it. But one thing I'm never afraid of is failure, which is really interesting to see. And I think that also stems from, the example that my mom gave me. I wasn't afraid to fail. So I was definitely up for the journey. I don't think that it was easy by any means. I think that you have to get used to hearing the word no, or understanding that one style of practice may or may not work. And, one thing that chiropractic gave me was a strong healthcare background, a strong ability to diagnose, to offer healing to patients. But, you don't really think when you're younger that health and business go together. And so that was probably the biggest reality check, is understanding business.
At what point were you like, okay, I want to do something more. I want to do this positivity by night. When did you know that there was something more you wanted to do?
I think when things kind of leveled off, there was a plateau in my life. And, I think that every once in a while, everyone has to set the reset button, because as you get older, you're faced with different challenges. And I was really stuck. And I had to really sit down and say, what do I want from life? And it's not necessarily something that you can fix overnight, and I'm a fixer, that's what I do for people. That's what, my strength is. And so when things weren't working, it was adding new tools and new strategies into my life. And the power of positivity is real. It's research based. There's many studies and outcomes of people who have that type of mindset. And the science behind it really motivated me because, at the end of the day, I'm kind of a geek. I read journals. I pay attention to statistics and what's out there in the news. And so I knew it was a tool that I wanted to use. But then you have to sit down and define what positivity is. Because, I say to people, it's really easy to look at a glass and say it's half full, right? But then what do you do after that, right? And so it's this whole connecting the dots. And once I started to practice this, I realized that there's some power in here. And I wanted to help people, turn that light bulb on as well.
That's where the positivity charge came.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about it.
So I wanted to do something outside of my practice that could instill community and could instill the practice of positivity. And so a retreat came about after I met Parisha Smith. She's the co-founder of the retreat. And it was really over a cup of coffee. And it was one of those things where it just kept building up, all these ideas. And we kind of just looked at each other and said, why don't we do this? Why don't we set up a one-day retreat that's easy for people to access, that presents a lot of information that people can use for growth? Because at the end of the day, it was fighting that plateau. And I wanted people to feel that they could fight their own plateaus and really challenge their comfort level. And so a one-day retreat, bringing hundreds of women together, that's a powerful vibe. Mm-hmm. And so if I could facilitate that and I could create that, that was just one more strategy or one more tool in my tool belt that I could share with people, and not just share with people, but experience with people. Because I think a lot of times people feel maybe lonely, or they don't know how to really put themselves out there. And so this is that stepping stone, a one-day retreat where there's workshops, there's other people who are like-minded, who have the same goals. And when you're surrounded by that energy, more energy grows. And so it was really a day for women. And, 4 retreats later, here I am. And this year we're planning, our biggest retreat in Philadelphia at the Warwick Hotel, where we get to host over 300 women. And so it's amazing.
As you've done this and as you've met with so many women, what have you learned about women? Generally speaking, is there something that we're all kind of dealing with?
We're all, thinking the same way. And I think that we all want the best for each other and the best for ourselves. And we want a forum to be able to do this on a bigger scale than can happen with just oneself. And so really, I feel that women want to empower each other, and it's about finding that environment. And at the end of the day, we all go through the same things, but at different times in life. And I think that was the biggest eye opener for me, is to get all these women in a room and to have all these commonalities. We're the same creatures. It's the human element. And it's a very powerful thing.
I think it's amazing how the tides have turned, because when I was growing up, it was really, I almost think I was taught this just culturally. It was woman versus woman. Like, we couldn't be friends. We had to have cliques, and we had to be against this person and against this person, and no one was out to help each other. Did you feel that? Have you felt a shift?
I've definitely felt a shift, because I couldn't agree more. When I was growing up, I was never, welcomed into these little cliques, and I was, really struggling and trying to figure it out. And I think over time, I actually realized that when we come together, more magic happens, more innovation happens, more strategy happens. And it's really something that we can use to just elevate, right? And so that saying, like, you're climbing up the ladder, but bring others with you. I really think that's actually manifesting, right? It kind of goes back to how I feel about positivity. It's one thing to think it like, oh yeah, I do that, but it's changed so much to the point where people are, like, women are actually doing it now.
Mm-hmm. How have you been personally impacted by grabbing a woman's hand, pulling her up and say, hey, we're going along, we're succeeding, we're both going to do this?
At the retreat, there was this one woman who came, and she's come to every single retreat afterwards, but she had emailed me prior to the event, and she was unsure of if she wanted to come because she was coming by herself. And at the retreat, I saw her, and she was surrounded by, so many people just like her. And when she walked out that day, I was standing at the door, and she said, you know what, Rubina, I came in by myself, and I'm leaving with a team of 5 people. And if I look at her social media, those same 5 people are still hanging out. They're still empowering each other. And to watch things like that happen, I mean, that, small thing, I think about that story a lot. I think about, women and what we're going through. And if we can just get into that room together, and various stories like this can happen, whether it being meeting somebody who has some sort of the same business goals as you, and pairing up and doing some sort of collaboration. I see that a lot now too, with the women who have come to retreat, meeting other people where, it's really just about growth.
I love that story. What a great story. Okay, I want to rewind a little bit because you said it's really easy to say, oh yeah, the glass is half full, but it's harder to do what comes after that. So what does come after that?
It's thinking. It's really thinking about, okay, so this glass is half full, but what does that mean? And can you apply it, to your life? And so I think about the chaos that I have with a small child right now. And it's really easy for me to just say, okay, the glass is not half full. I'm drowning. I have too many things to do. I'm failing. But then I have to take a step back and think about it and say, having a child is a blessing. Creating these memories and these traditions and, having these snuggles and these playtimes, and so it's defining what that is for you. And I think that you have to define it in different categories of your life. So you really have to sit down and say, okay, family, career, personal, what are my health practices? What do they really do for me? Because something simple as using essential oils, especially in the winter, I like to use them, that's the glass half full. You're doing something that's positive for yourself. You're trying to create a reaction in your body, whether it be you're smelling lavender to help you fall asleep. And really, you should celebrate your glass half full moments and recognize what they're really doing. That causes a huge shift in the way that you then look at life and appreciate every single action that you make throughout the day.
I like that you said too, take a step back, because I think when we take a step back from our emotions and feeling overwhelmed and feeling with the chaos, dealing with the chaos of life, it's way easier from maybe even if you take a third person perspective, it's easier to see, oh my goodness, look at all of this different positivity throughout my day. Look at all of these different things that I have adding to my life.
Yeah, exactly. And we are emotional creatures. So we make decisions based on emotion. But the tendency in life is that we make decisions a lot on detrimental emotions or negative emotions. So it's really easy to get caught up in sadness and fear and anxiety and being overwhelmed. But in reality, emotion is happy, it's joy, it's surprise, it's all these other things in the spectrum that we have to really open up to understand the big picture.
Mm-hmm. When you were on the plateau that you talk about, when you kind of plateaued out, how did positivity come into play? Did you have to reach out to positivity and be specifically positive to bring that into your life?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I decided to do a challenge with a friend. It was a 21-day challenge, and I had to post something because I love social media. It's a great outlet for me. I had to post something that I did, that I saw, that was positive. And so the night before this challenge started, I kind of became panicky because I'm like, okay, I don't know what to post. And that was because I was stuck. I had reached this plateau, but realizing that, taking the leap to think a bit differently, that was what was going to get me out of it. And so for 21 days, I dug really deep because it was easy for me to say that nothing is an example of positivity because I
Yeah.
was, stuck in this hamster wheel of this negativity, whether, wherever it was coming from. And so, day one was hard. And so you kind of have to get through day one. You got to move through day two. You're gaining confidence. You're gaining your strength. And what I like to think of it is, you're basically peeling back the layers of doubt, fear, whatever your plateau is, whatever those negative emotions are. And by the time I got to day 21, I realized, the abundance of my life, but I had to push through.
I love that because I call myself a recovering pessimist. So tell me, tell me the difference between day one Rubina and day 21 Rubina.
Oh, day one, Rubina was angry, like blaming things that I don't know, probably weren't even real at that point because you're just so stuck in not understanding your world and so really frustrated. And as the days went on, it was less of this anxiety, it was confidence. And so after this exercise, I left feeling zen, feeling confidence, almost like I had awakened my inner peace, but achieved balance on a scale. So if the scale was completely tipped, and I'm talking like there was a boulder on the scale, what I did was remove that boulder and I got to balance. And I like to always relate this back to science. Like we say homeostasis. So the body is working, everything is flowing, everything is balanced. And that's what day 21 Rubina became.
Why do you think, for people like both of us, obviously high achievers, people who have goals, people who want to make a difference, why do we hit this plateau where we have to be very intentional about adding positivity to our lives? How did we end up there in the first place? What do you think?
Because life is a pattern. Sometimes life can be like that movie Groundhog's Day, and we don't even realize it, right? Because we talk about how pattern and consistency is, achieving success, right? Like you're working out 3 times a week, you've got your meal prep going on. And so we get very comfortable. But comfort is not good for success, in my opinion. If you don't put yourself in an environment often and maybe even weekly that doesn't challenge you, you can never grow. But what you can do is get comfortable and get in a rut. And you know what? It works for some people, but I don't think long term for anybody. Some people who are comfortable, with a small business, some people who are comfortable with a big business, it's the same thing. You're just going to get into this pattern quicker.
I think you're right. You need that growth. And that's where the fear comes in. Tell me about putting on one of these events, these retreats, and some of the fear. Did you have fear? You must have been a little afraid.
Oh, totally. I mean, I'm afraid every single year. A couple days before the retreat, I have nightmares that, I walk into this empty space, because people have decided, they're busy that day or, really, off the wall types of things. But of course I'm scared, but I kind of like that feeling because I know that I'm making an impact. So if I'm not scared, I'm like, okay, wait, this is too comfortable. But, it kind of goes back to that chiropractic business that I had. I don't have any idea about how to run a retreat 4 years ago, right? I mean, there's different things that are involved and different safety things and, different contracts. And so, of course, it's scary. But what I've learned through women empowerment is there's always a woman that's out there that if you ask for an opinion or you ask for help, they will be honored to give that information to you. And it's really this community that we've created. And so now, pulling on resources is a little bit easier, but of course, being scared, are we picking topics that are relevant to women right now? Are they going to want to go to this workshop? Should we do yoga this year or should we switch it up and do Pilates? What kind of workouts does everyone want to do? Like, things like that, because the experience is so important to me. I want people to come in and really just navigate through this, being themselves, picking and choosing what they want to empower them, but when you do that for 300 people, you're obviously picking and choosing elements that you're adding in. And I wonder sometimes, I'm like, okay, is this the right package? But you have to trust your gut. And Parisha always talks about perfection paralysis. I like to think that, Parisha and I are very much a balance. we make one balanced person is basically what happens. But I don't have perfection paralysis, but Parisha likes to go through things like really, crossing all the T's, dotting all the I's. And so that's why when we put stuff out there, it's this really amazing balance. But I'm always like, yeah, go for it. Let's put this out there, but I do get nervous about it because, it's a project that's so important, because I think of what is out there. There's not a lot of retreats or events that focus on positivity and mindset. Mm-hmm. There are many retreats that have a sole focus of a particular workout or a particular diet. But what we are doing is focusing on the mindset, because once you have that mindset, you can be successful at whatever you choose to do personally.
Wow. Okay, we're going to come back to mindset in a minute. But first I want to ask, by pushing through fear, by having fear and moving anyway, what have you learned about yourself?
I've learned that I have a skill set that I didn't know about, and I'm happy that I discovered it. I think that fear really tests you, and you can pull on things in your life, and you can remember experiences that you went through and use it to push you through. And I think that, fear also has a time component too, because the more you push yourself through sort of fearful situations in life, you get better at it. So the first time I was up against fear, it wasn't like the best journey through it, but it was still the journey through it. Right. And so now I think that I'm better able to handle those situations.
You learn from it.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's go to mindset. So what is so important about mindset?
Mindset is your navigator. It's your driver as you go through life. Mindset can make you or break you, in my opinion. A positive mindset, people who have that mindset, they have more success with things that they do at work, with putting together ideas, with putting things into action. And so you have to connect with your mindset, because when your mind is saying one thing, your body will join in, and that is the mind-body connection.
Is it hard for people to get there? As you've been working with people, is it hard to make that switch?
Absolutely. It's hard to make that switch. Absolutely. And I think that, one of the things that I'm really excited about coming to the forefront is mental health issues.
Yes.
And I think about people behind closed doors wanting to have a positive mindset. And some people struggle and say, well, I want it, but what is happening? Why can't I achieve this? And so people now coming out and saying, this is what I want. Maybe I need help to get there. And that's an amazing thing, because you can't do everything alone. Right. And that's the human element. And that's what female empowerment is. And so if you can get to a safe place where people can help you practice, and then you take it on and are able to control it, that's an amazing thing.
Have you worked directly with people who are seeing this change in their life?
I work with people through, the positivity charge. I would say that I'm not, a psychiatrist, or I don't have that formal training, but I do have a healthcare background where I'm able to diagnose and recognize things. But as a chiropractor, I don't treat. But in terms of coaching and meeting with women and bouncing ideas off of each other and helping each other through things, whatever stage they're at in their life, I directly, am in contact with a lot of people. And I think that these small group settings really help to get the wheels turning, and it's a good starting place for people. But you have to sort of, gauge where you're at. There's nothing wrong with reaching out to another woman and asking for help. But there's something about self-care where you sometimes have to say, I need a healthcare professional. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I love that, because for people dealing with serious mental illness conditions, it's very, very hard to be positive. It's actually, your brain is not allowing you to do that. So I love that you mentioned recognizing that and then seeking that professional help.
Absolutely.
I think you have an event coming up where you're going to be talking a lot about mental illness and also the tips to kind of deal with some of that when it comes to journaling. Can you tell me about that?
So on March 31st in Philadelphia, we're doing a mindset master social, which I love because we're going to address mental fitness, as I like to call it. And so the day starts with a brunch because, we love to socialize with other women.
And that is important.
And yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That FaceTime, put down your phone, come out from, behind the woodworks, and let's all have conversations with each other. I mean, that's part of health and wellness, to see emotion, to react to people, to channel those vibes. And then we're going to move into a chocolate meditation. And what I love about a chocolate meditation is, we're working with the dark chocolate, which has, the little bliss molecule in it. So it's going to cause a chemical reaction, which we want to do. And then in turn, pairing that with a meditation, that's really something new that's out there. And we wanted to do something different, for people to, take a liking to meditation. I mean, if you're going to pair something with chocolate,
I know. I love meditating. I think meditating is incredible. I didn't realize it could be better. I did not realize that. That's so cool.
Yeah, and it's going to be such a positive experience. Then we'll move into keynote speaking. So, of course, we want to talk about, the stigmas of mental health and what people can do to break through those barriers. And then journaling. So journaling is a vehicle towards mental health because it's a pen and paper. You can write down whatever you want. There's no judgment. You cannot judge yourself when it comes to journaling. It's such a safe place, which is why I love teaching this workshop, because it is an opportunity for you to write whatever you want. And it doesn't need to make sense. That's what journaling is all about. It's about putting those ideas out there, rereading them, and connecting with the thoughts and patterns that are in your mind. Because when you go through the exercise, you can see, we are creatures of habit. The same themes and the same elements will come up. And so through this process, you can actually identify some of your roadblocks, because you'll see the pattern. You'll see what you're writing about in your day, at night when you wake up. There is a pattern. And so it takes a little bit of time. I recommend journaling for 30 days. And then going back and kind of going through your work and getting, some concrete ideas down, some themes, and then taking those themes and only journaling about them.
Wow. It's that third person perspective when you can look back and read it and say, oh my goodness, I'm doing this over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I've been journaling over the past year, my common theme where I can see I'm taking, that little dark turn, it had to do with my inability to discuss my emotions about being a new mom.
Wow.
And once I identified that and took that theme and started journaling about it further, I had then realized I wasn't being patient with myself. And I was almost punishing myself for not making every day perfect, when in reality, that's not what a mom is.
Right.
But it was fascinating that I got caught up in this, almost like tornado of emotions, and I didn't realize it. And through journaling, I was able to really uncover something that I didn't know was bringing me down.
Wow. That's pretty incredible. And then you can change things.
Absolutely.
So in these workshops, what do you ask everyone to do? Are you giving them a piece of paper? What are you saying? What is the first step?
So in our workshops, in a journaling workshop, we actually provide the journal. And so what we do is we, break the journal up into categories. And so one of the fun things that I like to do is, 3/4 of the way through, I like to say, write a nice message to yourself. So when you get to that page, you're motivating yourself. You're being your biggest cheerleader. And so it's walking people through setting the journal up to work for them, because we can't go through, obviously, 30 days of journaling in 1 hour.
Right.
But it's setting it up so that you hit your reminders, you stay on track. If you feel stuck, where in this journal can you go to, get tips and tricks for taking a little bit of a break, maybe when it comes to journaling. But it's all about making the pages and your thoughts work for you. And I'm always happy to help people organize that, because there's this one picture on Instagram and it's really funny. It's like these two characters are standing side by side and there's one of those thinking bubbles, and one of them is a completely blank thinking bubble. And the character is like, oh, this is what my brain is like. And then the other character, it's like all these scribbles in the thinking bubble. And I really think that's so true. Like we have a lot of thoughts and emotions, and there's different layers to our consciousness, right? And that's another deeper conversation, but learning how to bring that stuff out, right? And it's easy if you are in the right environment to do so.
I've seen that picture and it reminds me of my sister. We had a conversation in college. We lived together for a short time during college while we were both in college. And it came to my attention that her mind wasn't always on overdrive. And I was like, wait, your mind isn't always going? And she's like, no. I'm like, wait, what? That's a way you can live? And it was just like, holy cow. And I've gone back to that, especially as I've practiced meditation, because that isn't something that comes wired in me. I've got to take a moment to back away from all of the thoughts that are continually going.
I agree with you. I'm the same way.
So to get that journal set up, it might be kind of, I don't know, a little bit scary to try journaling if you haven't before. You might be a little bit afraid of your thoughts. What are some of the encouraging words you give women to get this started?
Be honest with yourself. There's nothing wrong with feeling the way that you feel. And I think it's just about getting real, like keeping it real. We all love real talk, and everybody wants to, this is what I say to women, everybody wants to feel comfortable in their own skin, comfortable being themselves. And so if I were to hand you a journal and said to you, if you go through this exercise, you will feel stronger and more comfortable about being yourself, would you do it? Of course you would do it. You would take that book and be like, let me start writing right now.
Right.
Because, self-acceptance, you need those reminders, right? And we need to push away from seeking that acceptance from other people. And so I like to present it that way, because we want to be strong in our convictions and strong in our ideas and strong in our daily practices. And I think that women love that. And you have to just kind of go into it with an open mind. And really, when I say there's no right or wrong answer, that helps to kind of eliminate the fear. And it's enough to start the process. And really, once you get going, you really get going. It's like that whole thing about doing a workout. Who after a workout says that was a bad idea, right? I think about that a lot. And so that's kind of the same thing with journaling.
And it also, I think, comes back to self-care, because I'm thinking if there's an excuse not to journal, it's time. And you got to put that time into yourself.
You have to invest in yourself. It's your biggest investment. It's your best investment. And, there's many ways that you can do that. And I think the power of words really has its place in life. And I think that when you connect with words and you connect with the words of your own story, that's when you can really channel your power.
Do you have any prompts to get people started if someone's really roadblocked on what to write?
Yeah. And I think that you can start with emotion, right? Like emotion, as I mentioned, is a motivator. So what, did you do today that made you feel really happy? And if you had a bad day, like identify 5 emotions that you felt today and why did you feel that way? It could be simple as, being angry because you dropped your coffee. I don't know. That's like what I think would make me angry. Right. So, it's like identifying your emotions and really just going from there. And if really that's all you do on day one, you connected. You connected with your mind and you were able to write about it a little bit. And that's a win at the end of the day. And so if page one, day one, looks like 3 sentences, and then, page 30, day 30 is completely full, that's success.
Why do you think that in 2019, we are still dealing with this mental illness stigma?
There's so much pressure. There's so much pressure. And I think that, we are in a world of social media, and we can really, paint narratives that are unrealistic and think that people can keep up with that kind of stuff. Everybody has different resources. Everybody has access to stuff that is different. And I think that when we see other people, we think that our resources or what we have surrounding us might not be up to par. And that's not the case. It's just the way that social media presents itself and different accounts that they push to the top of these feeds, and I think that that's why you need to connect more at events, like more at face value, right? Like talking to a person, because that's real talk. Social media is a platform to, tell your story and have fun. But if you get lost down a road that you weren't supposed to go on, that can be really detrimental. And I don't think people are talking enough.
What needs to change? Like personally, each person, I feel like, can make a decision what they're going to post on these social media programs.
I think it goes back to fear. So you cannot be afraid to say that something is wrong. Okay. So, and I need to get better at this as well too. But in my social media, I post about positivity, things that are happening in my life, my daughter. But maybe it's time for me, maybe it's time for everyone else to say like, hey, I was thinking about such and such topic today. Here's where I think we're going a little bit wrong. Here's what I'd like to see more of. Mm-hmm. And we all have to set that example, because if we all sit here and wait for somebody to do it, it's not gonna happen. Mm-hmm. And so I think part of what women empowerment is making that commitment to talk about what we need to plant more seeds of, whether it's kindness, whether it's gratitude, whether it's, meeting with, a friend and putting a business project out there to set an example for younger women. Whatever it is, we need to do more of that. And we also need to document it, because I'm pretty sure there's a lot of women with really amazing projects, and we just need to talk about them more.
I want to go back to that face-to-face communication. We've mentioned it a couple times already, but I think that's where we grow, and that's where we learn, and that's where we see the realness in one another, and that's where we can feel totally validated. So tell me what it's like to be at one of your retreats and see these connections happening.
There's always a common element with people. If you say that, hey, I'm a journalist. Oh, hey, I'm a chiropractor. Oh, did you see that health story that came out? Or here's what happened in my office. There was somebody who was talking about this article. There's always a connection, right? And so what you're doing is connecting these dots, but that can't happen if you like a Facebook post, right? Mm-hmm. Like there's no exchange of energy or stories on that level. And I think that we feed off of people's excitement or their passions, hearing somebody speak in person versus watching something on YouTube, that's really different. And so also the idea, like if you go to a sporting event live, why is that more exciting than watching it on the TV? It's because it's this intense collaborative emotion, and realizing that we're all human at the end of the day. Right. And so we're all just people trying to navigate through life together.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think it's so important that we specifically, like we have to set aside time to get together, be very intentional about having these face-to-face interactions?
We have to be intentional about it because that's provoking change, right? And so we all want change in a positive direction, in a direction that facilitates growth. We all want the magic to happen, right? But that doesn't happen, sitting behind your laptop or on your phone. And we have to admit it. I think that's really what it is, because our phones, our technology, like I think it promotes laziness when it comes to human interaction, because we think we're interacting. And it's true, social media has a certain interaction level to it, but that's really taking away from what we're meant to do. And we're meant to be in a room full of other people. We're meant to, say hi to people, to connect. A chiropractor, what I do is I work with my hands. I'm healing people with my hands. I'm not going to be doing that on Skype or, through a podcast, right? It's that human connection that we need to be very specific about setting aside time for, or else we're going to get comfortable. And that kind of leads back to what we were talking about. We can hit plateaus. We can hide. And it goes back to mental health as well. You can hide in your room. You don't have to talk to anybody. You could paint this picture that you're completely fine. But if you have to put yourself out into the world, meeting someone, even if it's for a coffee, whatever emotion you take with you is not going to be the same emotion that you go back home with.
I think you're absolutely right. Even for me, for a decade and a half, every single day I was on television and I was talking. And then I backed away from that and just am like doing this podcast in my own little studio by myself. I don't have to see anyone face to face. And then when it comes to some big event, I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm feeling this new emotion that I did not feel when I was talking every day to people. And that's nervousness, like maybe a little bit of anxiety, but it's practice. It's really practice.
Absolutely. And I think there's something to be said about, doing a podcast live just for the fun of it, or when we are doing podcasts, turning on that camera and actually looking at the person. Sometimes as a mom, I don't want to do that right now.
Yeah, right.
Because I'm pretty sure I have food all over my hair. But it's just kind of making a difference. So who are the people that are going to spice it up, right? Like who's going to think outside the box and be like, okay, how can I make this just a little bit different?
What do you think the biggest difference in you is since you started this trek on positivity?
I think that I'm becoming more comfortable being myself. And I think that as I talk to people more, I'm not really afraid to go for it. Like if I think something is funny or happy or makes me scared, I'll share it. It's almost like I've unfiltered myself.
Yeah, that feels
right?
good.
Like,
yeah.
It's very free and it's liberating. And I just go for it. And I think it's because I'm not necessarily looking for a reaction for anybody, but I'm looking for a space to just put something freely out there, or allowing my energy, to be in a space. And so I think that makes for really authentic interactions. And so that leads also to just not having regrets. Like it is what it is. I'm going to put this out there. I'm not going to think about it later. Cause sometimes I would do that, right? I would think about it. I would overthink something. And so being in that space of just letting it happen and understanding that it happened because I am authentically myself and I don't have to apologize for that.
Yeah. And that must feel good. It's so good when you can get to living in your own skin, living authentically.
Absolutely.
What would be your advice to people listening who aren't quite there yet? How do you get there?
You just have to keep going. I would say that it's not an overnight process. And I would say to people listening that, in the beginning when I was starting this journey, some days were good, some days were bad. Then I would have some months that were good and a couple of days that were bad. And then it would just lengthen to the point where I'd be like, wow, that was a really great year.
Cool.
Most of those days I was authentically myself. But it takes a long time to get there. And I'm not saying that, I'm perfect by any means. But if I do feel like, I've set myself back where I'm doubting myself, it's much easier to get back into that zone. And I think that, it's really making it simple. I love saying that. Make it simple. Practice, practice, practice. And then it will just become second nature.
Yeah, I love that. And simplicity is so wonderful. So you have a mindfulness practice, you're journaling, you're practicing positivity. What do you do on the negative days? Because there's those negative days creep in, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think that I embrace my emotions. And so if I want to cry, I'll cry. And I don't shame myself for that. If I want to, eat some ice cream, okay, that's fine. I'm not doing it every day. And it's just, something that it needs to happen that day. And I don't think that we need to food shame anybody either. I think we all have our different ways of getting through certain things, but you have to kind of look back and say, well, I was crying, but why was I crying? Or, I ate this ice cream, but, don't connect it to that emotion every single time. Like, you can do stuff, some days I literally have to step into the garage and scream, cause you've got to let it out. If you bottle things in, that can really spiral. And then what I really like to do when I'm having a bad day is laughter therapy. So laughter is going to release feel good chemicals like endorphins and enkephalins, and those are going to be mood boosting. And so I will set a timer and I will make myself laugh. And like the first 30 seconds is awful because I'm probably crying a little bit like while that first 30 seconds is happening. But your own laughter is contagious. And if you can just get to that 2 minutes, change the chemicals in your body, you're going to come out a different person. And then I'm able to build on that and get to where I need to be.
I almost want to laugh thinking of myself, laughing at myself. But if anyone's thinking I'm not going to do it, just try it one time. Because I can see that, scientifically that helps.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can do it anywhere.
Yeah.
You can be in your office, close the door, or invite your coworkers to do it with you,
You'll really get laughing going.
Absolutely.
I love that idea. One of the things I love most about what you said is that you let yourself experience the emotions, and the only big difference I think from where you are and other people are is you do not let the shame in. And I think that is such an important part.
Absolutely. And that took practice too, because, it's very easy to shame yourself. It's really easy to say like, how could I be feeling this way? This is awful, but you are what you are.
Yeah.
Life is full of ups and downs are different, emotions, and we cannot self-punish.
Yeah.
It's very detrimental.
You'll understand this because you have a little one, but I was just talking to my husband about nursing, and I absolutely hate nursing. And I know some people love it, but I absolutely hate it. And I told him I'm doing one more month and then I'm out. And I started to say, and I feel bad about that. But then I said, actually, I don't feel bad. I don't feel bad. I'm not going to shame myself for where I am in this, because this is not helping my mental health, and this is not helping our relationship. So we're going to move forward. And I felt pretty proud about leaving that shame behind.
Yeah, you absolutely should. That's such a wonderful example that you shared. And I think that we should encourage more women to share that, because I think that I didn't realize, and this is very true, how big mommy shaming was until I became a mom. And, I went through my own journey with feeding, and I actually didn't make milk. I was just one of those random statistics.
That was my first child. Yep, I was right there with you.
Yeah. And I was not good for a while. And so this is kind of, the beginning of reaching that negativity space for me, like recently at the beginning of, becoming a mom. And I think that I really had to work through that. But I think that just like you shared that story, it triggered something in me. And then it made me just really remember that situation and be so happy that I was able to work through, that shame. And that's really what these face-to-face reactions and actions and meetings do.
Yeah.
And so we're able to work through this and stop, this big, huge thing of shaming, that does exist. We can't act like it's not there.
No, it absolutely does. And it's going to take some work, I think, to bring all the walls down about all the different parts of mommy shaming that happens, but one conversation at a time.
Absolutely.
Okay. The question that I like to end with, because this is a podcast all about finding joy in the everyday, I like to ask, what is your number one tip to finding more joy in the everyday, regardless of what it is you're going through?
Get excited.
Oh, I love that.
Get excited about the simplest of things. Like when you get out of bed, like get out of bed, like be excited about it. Put some perk in your step when you get into, the bathroom to brush your teeth. Be excited about it. It's a new day, and take that excitement into everything that you do. Like create your own buzz, your own little headline,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then live it. And I think that when you start your day, not just with intention, but excitement, that channels a lot of positive energy through. And so that's what I love to do so much in the morning.
Yes, I love that. It changes the monotony from I have to do this to I get to do this. And I love that.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I love all of the different ideas you've shared here, and I'm sure it will really touch a lot of people listening. So I'm really, really thankful for you coming on.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was great.
One of my favorite things about this talk with Rubina was her last advice to just be all in for every moment. Show up with more than just intention, but excitement. Rubina has a really amazing retreat coming up. I'm going to make sure that's linked. You'll also find her podcast, her website, and all of her social links as well. Thanks for being here on Happiness in Progress.